Hey everyone, welcome back to the Modern Trumpeter Podcast. I got to hear and meet today's guest at ITG 2026 in Rochester, New York, with his big band, and to hear him give a clinic and talk about working on Broadway. Today's guest is Tony Kadleck. Throughout his career, Tony Kadleck has been praised as a highly effective sideman who has lent his hand to numerous musical activities. He is currently one of the most sought-after trumpet players in the New York area. After graduating from the Manhattan School of Music in 1989, Kadleck did some touring with Frank Sinatra, Barbra Streisand, and Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Eventually, the New York studios kept Tony too busy to leave town, and he found himself recording with a number of artists, including Luther Vandross, Michael Jackson, Elton John, and Celine Dion. Kadleck also spends time playing a wide variety of live concerts, having performed with Stevie Wonder, Ella Fitzgerald, Isaac Hayes, and most recently, Steely Dan. Tony is currently a member of many organizations, including the New York Pops, John Pizzarelli's Swing 7, the Maria Schneider Orchestra, John Fedchock's New York Big Band, and can currently be heard on Broadway in the band for MJ. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and YouTube at Modern Trumpeter to hear our other interviews and to get updated on our book. Sign up for our mailing list at moderntrumpeter.com. Now, here's my interview with Tony Kadleck. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Modern Trumpeter Podcast. Today we get to speak with Tony Kadleck. Thanks, Tony, for being with us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I always like to ask when we start out how you first got into the trumpet and at what moment you decided you wanted to make it your career.
So I started on drums because my dad had played the drums and there was a drum set upstairs and I played that for, I guess, maybe 2 years, and I was kind of bored in that, like, I was just playing rhythms and I wanted to play notes, and in front of the drums were the baritone horn section. So I said, well, I want to do that. I want to change notes and play. So I played baritone horn for a year, and then I was like, geez, I never get the melody. What a drag. So the trumpets were in front of us. So I said, I want to do that. So I didn't really play trumpet till I was about 13 or 14.
Okay.
And I got really into it really quickly. And I would say by the time I was 15, maybe 16, I thought to myself, boy, I'd really like to do this for a living.
Wow.
Of course, wisely, my parents tried to talk me out of it, but that didn't take. So
Obviously, here we are. What about the trumpet wanted you to, like, what brought that on of just wanting to play the trumpet for a living?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it was I had really good schooling, good music programs within our school district, and I had a lot of friends that were in music, and I have a lot of high school friends that are still like active in music and big on the jazz scene primarily. So we kind of fed off each other. But as far as the trumpet, I don't really know. I think I found that there was a trumpet teacher in my town. His name was Bernie Schifrin, and he was really great. And he kind of instilled upon us this work ethic, and it just seemed much more organized than the other instruments. And so I got with him pretty early. And I mean, he was tough. He would, if I didn't practice, he would send me home and say, "You tell your mother why you're home early, and here's her check, and you don't waste my time anymore." So after a few of those, it's like, okay, I'm going to get it together now. But the payoff was also great too. He just made it fun, and it was really enjoyable. And so I guess in that way, it was kind of him that was the catalyst for me to kind of advance on the trumpet.
Yeah, I think like having a private teacher is, I think, one of the things that can really set people apart early on. Like, and I've done that with kids where it's like, yeah, I didn't really pick up the horn since last week, and I'm like, all right, the door's there. See ya. And so after that, so you were about 15, 16 where you wanted to start doing it. Then where did you end up going to school, or did you go to school?
I did. I played all the way through high school, and then we were chatting about Eastman before. And as an upstate New Yorker, all I wanted in life was to get into the Eastman School of Music.
Mm-hmm.
I auditioned at 4 schools and I got in everywhere. And then at Eastman, I got on the wait list and I was so bummed out. I was like, oh, God, life is over. And then I wound up going to New England Conservatory in Boston, which actually, in retrospect, was probably a better idea because Eastman would have kind of been another lateral city. I was from a town called Binghamton, New York, and upstate. And I think if I had gone to New York right at 18, it would have been too much for me. So Boston was really a nice stepping stone city. So I went there for about 2.5 years, and then I quit because I got a chance to go on the road with Buddy Rich, and so I did that. Much to my parents' chagrin, I left school. And then when I got off Buddy's band, they said, "You're getting your degree. You started. You're going to finish." So, and I didn't want to go back to Boston. I wanted to go to New York eventually anyway. So I finished at Manhattan School of Music. So I just went to those two schools.
Okay. And so you just have bachelor's, no master's or doctorate.
Right. And I always tell my students, look, if you want to teach someday, even if you think you might want to teach, definitely get a degree beyond the bachelor's degree, because on the bandstand, no one cares where you went to school. But when you go to teach, everybody cares. So.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way to put it. Because I've heard similar things where nobody's going to ask you for your degree for any gig you're on. It's like just play. That's all they want. But in some cases, it's unique. Like it sounds like in your circumstance, you only have a bachelor's, but because of the experience you have, you're able to kind of bypass that and be teaching.
In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. I've tried for a lot of gigs that basically they told me, it's silly. We can't even look at you because, even though with your experience, you'd be teaching students to do what you're doing currently, but people that give money to these institutions need to know that everyone's accredited to a certain level.
Yeah.
So, so I totally get that, so I've been turned down for more gigs than I've been hired for in terms of the education world, but that's
Mhm.
okay. I think I've carved a pretty nice thing, and I like my adjunct status at the schools I teach at.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Because you're adjunct at schools as opposed to like a tenure track.
Yeah, I mean, I've probably been adjunct at, I don't know, 10, 12 schools over the years, and never a full-time thing where benefits and all that. So
Yeah, that makes sense. It seems, and maybe it'd be great to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think, well, you said a little bit earlier about if you think you might want to even teach a little bit, like you should go beyond a bachelor's. Do you think it's worth it for young musicians today to be going for a master's degree or a doctorate degree? Maybe it depends on the situation, but would love to hear your thoughts in that regard.
yeah, I think if you're looking at education, I mean, you almost have to. Although that seems to be changing a little bit. I think some of the job openings now will indicate that you can, we'd like a doctorate, we'd like a master's, but we would consider professional experience toward that, which is great because for years it was not the case. They wanted the doctorate, they wanted the master's, and it seemed like, well, okay, I get that, but wouldn't you like some sort of, real world experience as well? So I think it is changing a little bit, but I think still at this point, it'd probably be a good idea to continue on and get a master's. I don't know that I regret that I didn't get one, but actually during the pandemic, I was considering getting one online, and it just ended up not happening. And now I'm in my 60s, and it doesn't, at this point for me, I kind of am what I am, and I'm going to get what I get, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But if I were starting out, I would definitely go towards that. For performance, I would say no, but for education, I would say yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I can see why that would be the case. So let's go back a little bit to Buddy Rich. How'd you get that call? What was that experience like, and how did it play into your personal development on the trumpet?
It was, well, I mean, I got the call because I was at New England Conservatory in Boston, and right down the road is Berklee College of Music, and at Berklee were great trumpet players named Eric Miyashiro and Greg Gisbert,
Yeah.
and I remember we had a big party when Eric got the call for Buddy's band, and we were excited for him. And then subsequently, Greg got called to play the jazz chair. And then the fourth trumpet player left, and they said, "Hey, are you into coming out?" And I weighed it, and I said, "Well, yeah, I'd like to." And my parents tried to talk me out of it, and I said, "No, I'm going to do it. It's going to be great." And so I mean, and to play with those guys, it was tremendous. And Buddy was, I mean, I was terrified. I was 21 years old, but they were. It was a learning experience, and I learned a lot about how to act and how to stay out of the line of fire and just be quiet and do the gig, and don't do anything to upset the situation. And yeah, it was great. I wasn't on for a very long time because after a while I was playing fourth trumpet and I was really starting to spread out my chops, and but I would not have wanted to play lead or the jazz chair at that point in my life. And Eric was tearing it up and Greg was tearing it up. So I stayed for a short amount of time, and I wanted to kind of start my life in New York, and that was prior to that. So
Yeah, Sure, sure. Well, that sounds like it was yeah, like a kind of a wake-up call, something you can't get in a classroom, right?
Yeah.
And do you know, and this is a question for, for young players. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of those type of opportunities nowadays. There's not a lot of touring big bands, and do you know if that's the case? I don't know if I've heard anything in recent years where you can get that type of experience anymore.
I think you're right. I think it's I mean, there are big bands around and there are great big bands, but the days of being out, 10 months a year are behind us, and it's just not cost effective, I think. And I think some big bands do pretty well. I know that, Gordon's band did a lot and continues even after his passing to do some work. And Maria Schneider's very busy, but a lot of her gigs are in Europe, and she'll be called to come and guest conduct bands. So that doesn't involve the rest of us, unfortunately. But there are things out there, but it's definitely not what it was. So I tell students to take every opportunity you can to play in large ensembles, just to learn to blend, to play in tune, to play in time, things that we took for granted because we were just doing it all the time. But now, if I sit with three other trumpet players, it's a big deal. I'm excited, but it used to be the norm. It's
Yeah.
just, there's still opportunities, but maybe not for that kind of playing.
Yeah, sure. What are those other opportunities that you commonly see and that you get to refer your students to do?
Well, most often now, it was cruise ships for a minute, and now it might be touring shows, or it may still be cruise ships. I've never gone that route, and I've never done a touring show either. But I know that they exist, and I've had a lot of friends that go out, and there are positions for Paul. We talked about Paul Barron earlier. He's been doing it on and off for a long time, and he's an Iron Man. He just, he keeps plugging away, and it's amazing. And there's a lot of really good players out there on the road, and so I think there are opportunities in that venue as well.
Okay, yeah. I've I've started recommending to kids that I've mentored who are now in college, like, hey, why don't you consider going out on a cruise ship during the summer between semesters, or go play at a theme park on the East Coast, like, go get some real world experience, like, don't work at McDonald's for the summer. Like, what are you doing? Like, go get that experience.
Yeah. In 1985, actually, the summer before I was on Buddy's band, I went to Disneyland and did a similar thing like that, played in the All-American College Band or whatever. We marched in the park and we made, a couple $100 a week or whatever it was, but it was fun. And we were out there and you really learn a lot. It's great. So I completely agree with you. I mean, it's even better if you can get medical benefits and stuff like that, but that's maybe a little down the line, but
Yeah, sure. Yeah, do you know, I mean, I've heard Eric talk about the McDonald's All-American Band and then Disney had, but they don't do that anymore. Then Disney and the All-American College Band, they shut that down. It's like, oh,
yeah.
no. So like it's a bummer to see some of these programs go away where even for high school kids where it's like would be so helpful. I know that there's like Jazz Band of America and what's the one that Sean Jones does? NYO. Do you know of any other programs that do similar things for either high school or college musicians?
Maybe not on that level, although the Jazz at Lincoln Center might have something in that vein. And I know that the Essentially Ellington thing is blown up, but
Yeah.
as far as touring, I'm not exactly sure about that. But the
Okay.
McDonald's band was amazing. I think Eric did it maybe the year before I did it, and then Greg Gisbert did it the year after I did it. And I just idolized. I listened to the recordings of those guys playing. I was like, wow. I mean, it's just I can't believe these are high school kids. So it was really like a big time eye opener for me, and
Oh
to
yeah.
yeah, and it was great.
It's incredible, man. So yeah, because like when you get that bug in high school, it's like, what can you do? It's like I want to as many resources as I can find to help kids know like where you can go and get more experience, the better. So after Buddy came back and decided to go to New York. And obviously you're from New York, so was there ever a thought for you of going to LA or going to another big place besides New York? And ultimately, why did you decide to stay in New York?
I think, I mean, I had spent the summer in LA when I did the Disneyland band, and
Yeah.
great. We met great clinicians. I took lessons, Bobby Shew. It was such a cool time for me. But I was from upstate New York, which is about 3 hours away from New York City. So I didn't really know New York all that well, the city itself. But it was kind of close to my family, and I said, well, let me try this. It just seemed like a more logical choice than LA. But you're right, in New York and LA were the choices back then. It seems like now there's great musicians everywhere. I mean, there probably always were, but I think there are opportunities every place. It's not just New York or LA. Nashville's huge, Chicago,
Yeah.
Dallas is so many great places to play music. But for me, New York made sense. And this year I celebrate 40 years being here, which seems to just feel like the new guy in town still, but clearly not the case with the white hair. But I will say it has ups and downs, but it was a really, really good environment for me to be in. And the trumpet community was very helpful and giving and working to get other folks on gigs, and everyone got their foot in the door because the people in front of them helped them out, and it was very nurturing vibe. So I was very lucky here.
Yeah, well, I want to dig into that too. Maybe coming up soon. There's all of that. Talking about other cities, I think a lot of young players, the impression I get is like, hey, I want to do music. I want to move to LA or New York, and I don't want to go anywhere else because it's those two are bust. Like you'd mentioned before, like there's great players everywhere, there's opportunity everywhere. What would you say to those young players who might kind of have tunnel vision on one of those two cities?
I don't see that as much now as I did maybe a couple decades ago. I think people realize that, I mean, you're going to get probably, I don't want to speak for everyone, but you're probably going to get a better quality of life in Tacoma, Washington than you are in New York City. Things aren't going to be expensive. It's not going to be as crowded. It's not going to be as these big cities are not for everybody. LA is more spread out. You can kind of, and you're in your car all the time. It's hard to have a car here. Everyone just takes the subway, so you're inundated with people
Yeah,
constantly. But I think the internet has also changed a lot of it too.
for sure. Yeah.
Used to be you have to, you got to be in the big city to get noticed. Now you can like, play a double C and pop it up on Instagram, and all of a sudden you got, 7 million followers, and it's just not it's changed the game so much that you don't really need to be in these places to get some notoriety.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that's, I don't know if there's a correct answer for this, but do you think that's a good thing, a bad thing, or down the
I still really
middle?
Yeah, my friends my own age, we talk about that a lot. It in some ways it can come off as like boasting, but in other ways it's advertising. And we used to pay people thousands of dollars to promote our projects, and now it's like, well, I mean, you still have to do it to some degree, but you can get a lot of juice just by, throwing your stuff up there and showing the world what you have. And I know contractors in town that even book people for gigs based on what they've seen on Instagram, which
Mhm.
seems a little suspect, but I mean, in many ways it works out. So
Yeah.
it's not, you have to be, you have to be comfortable with your own situation. And I don't begrudge anyone for throwing their stuff up there. For me, I don't want to saturate the market. Like I'm not gonna put videos up every day, because after a while, then it's like, oh, okay, oh, it's another video for the double C,
Yeah.
So I think you got to know your audience, and then maybe just tread a little lightly. But I think it's a super useful tool.
Yeah. It's like, I wish they had like a social media marketing course baked into like your degree. It's like, it's great you can play Mahler 5 really well. What's next? Besides, what else can you do? How does that help you?
I'd take that class. I'd
Yeah,
take it now.
yeah, me too. And that's like, again, yeah, what the purpose of the book is to you know take it. What's the next step of yeah, you have to be able to play. And that's something I've talked with all these people. It's like, I mean, they're all great players, and like you're not going to get called if you can't play, but you're also not going to get called if nobody knows who you are or anything like that. So you moved to New York, spent a couple of years in a Manhattan School of Music there, graduated, and what happened for you next?
I met a guy who we played in a brass sextet together. Really great trumpet player from Paris named Dominic Duras, who lived here for many years. And we were playing, and he had this Broadway show, and he said, "Hey, do you want to come and sub on the show?" I'm like, "Okay, yeah." I didn't certainly go to New York to play shows. I went to New York to be a recording thing, player and freelancer. I wasn't opposed to shows, but I certainly didn't go for that. But then again, there was a lot more recording back then. But
Yeah.
so I went in and watched the book. He said, "Yeah, you're just going to watch me play it, and someday I'm going to call you, and you're going to go in." I said, "Okay, cool." And like maybe a week later, he said, "Hey, you want to go in tonight?" I'm like, "Tonight?" I'm like, "Yeah." Oh, he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I guess." I mean, wow. Okay. And so I went in, and you either sink or swim, and then you hopefully get invited back. That was a different time. That was the mid '80s. Now it's a little more. Everyone has like a copy of the book. They have a video of the conductor. There's a Dropbox. There's this. There's that. I mean, they kind of put it on a platter for you.
Yeah.
But it was a little different scene. So, but that's kind of how I got into that. But I also did Latin gigs. I did salsa gigs and cumbia gigs and merengue gigs and whatever came around. I would play in bars with bands and then do weddings and all that stuff like everyone does. You just kind of my teacher John McNeil at New England said, when you get to New York, you go out and do everything. If they call you for a supermarket opening at 9 in the morning, you show up and you play your trump. You just get out there and you meet people, and that was
Yeah,
pretty good.
yeah. I think that's one thing that like it seems like so many opportunities and so many gigs, if not all of them, really come from who you know and the relationships you build. So could you talk a little bit about that, if like how relationships have helped you in your career with obviously starting with this Broadway show and then other experiences, other opportunities you've been able to have?
Sure. I think, if I talk about the gig I'm going to tonight, and I really thought about it for about 20 minutes, I could trace that gig back to probably 20 different people. Well, I got that because, well, I knew this person. Oh, but I met that person on a recommendation from this person. And you could just, like a family tree, you could just trace it all the way back to the people that gave you your start. And it's pretty cool to see the progression. But what McNeil was saying was just go out and meet people. That was incredibly great advice. Just because, you sit in a big band, you go to a free rehearsal at the Union Hall or whatever, and you're going to be playing with three other trumpet players. Well, that's three other chances to get noticed and maybe network with those folks. And so even the free gigs or some of the greatest players in the world I've met on some of the just dumbest gigs ever. And I'm looking there and I'm thinking, I can't believe I'm sitting next to this person and they're playing this ridiculous gig, and because they're like one of my idols. But then you develop relationships. So I think it's just good to get out there. No one calls you and asks you for a gig if you're sitting at home watching The Price is Right.
Yeah.
They're meeting people, and it just it's expensive, but you go to clubs where there are trumpet players and we're just musicians in general, and just meet folks, because then they say, "Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, we met at Birdland years ago." It just snowballs, and you have to kind of make yourself self accessible to everyone.
Yeah. And so like you mentioned going to clubs, going to like union rehearsals and whatnot. Are there any other places where young musicians could go to be meeting people? Like are in New York, are jam sessions common, or are there other things like that where you could go meet people?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely jam sessions. I don't really partake in those anymore, but I sure did when I was coming up. But there are jam sessions. There are certain restaurants and bars where a bunch of musicians will hang out between shows on a Wednesday or a Saturday, and you can just kind of show up there and, oh yeah, look, there's you could go to the bar and see like 10 musicians or eating and having a drink or whatever.
Yeah.
Just anything like that, you just get out there and be around the scene is helpful. And I always say to students, just seek out the people that are doing the kind of work you want to be doing, and just say, to them, "Hey, I know you're busy. Can I take you out for coffee or whatever?" And just sit down and talk to them for a while, and just say, "Look, how did you break in? What would be a good way for me to break in?" And people are generally pretty generous with their time and are happy to see other folks get into the scene and be successful. So
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned some of that before of, everybody's opening, keep getting your foot in the door, and there's the next guy there who's been helping, and so on and so forth. Is that culture still prevalent today, do you think?
I think it is. I think, yeah, I do. I think there are younger folks that definitely respect that and adhere to that. And there's always going to be someone who thinks that they should have all the gigs without paying any of the dues. But by and large, it's pretty minimal. most people realize that I mean, I sure did when I came up. I mean, there's a pecking order. I'm not going to take, I'm not going to come to town and take all John Faddis's work. I can tell you that. It's just not going to. Not only can I not do it, but it's just not who I am. I wouldn't do it. But you just have to wait your turn because it's a very slow thing, and it's hard. It's easy to be impatient. It's very expensive here, and the clock is ticking. You feel, oh boy, the mortgage is or the rent is due. Here I am, and I've done 2 gigs this entire month, but it happens. It just kind of takes time.
Yeah, yeah. For those situations and for like those students who are like, yeah, I've only had a couple gigs this month and it's so busy. Do you see those musicians like taking other jobs or kind of getting something steady in the meantime while work picks up?
Absolutely, I know friends that have done data entry or even during the pandemic, like top players would I mean, we had no money for except for unemployment for a year and a half. So
Yeah,
people were people they were taking jobs, like real jobs and whatever they could get. Um and it's just part of the culture. And we have our job security, unless you're in the Philharmonic or the Met or whatever, our job security is nil. I mean, you really just every day you're kind of crossing your fingers that tomorrow will come and you'll have a place to go play and work.
yeah,
It's tough. But yeah, people definitely pad their music income with their, daytime income if they need to.
sure. Yeah, and I think that's kind of, at least, well, and I'm speaking so much on like personal experience and kind of what I've seen from musicians out here in Utah, but like, I think sometimes we get an idea of like, I'm going to go to music school, graduate, and I'm going to start gigging, and that's it, and I've made it. And when it's like, no, there's a pecking order, you have to wait your turn. There's some kids in high school that I know who are like, "How do I get gigs? Can you refer me for some gigs?" And I'm like, "Well, you're still like 15. You're still 16. Like I know 20 sax players here in town that if I need a sax player, I'm probably going to go to them first before you. Not that I don't want to hire you, but I just have been working with these people longer." And they're like, "But like I can do it." And I'm like, I know you can do it, but like there's some patience that needs to be involved."
I agree. I mean, and it's innocent. It's of course everyone deserves a shot, but sometimes it just takes a minute.
Yeah, I think that's something. It's just yeah, that's what I'm trying to help with these young players is like, yeah, here's everything you need to do, and we're gonna set you up for the most success possible. And sometimes it just comes down to chance and waiting, and you'll get there. Um, Another question. Let's see. And okay, so did you ever have to go through a phase like that after graduating where you had to get something more steady on the side that wasn't necessarily music related or maybe working at a music store or anything kind of along those lines?
I was very lucky. I did not have to do that, but what I did do was I learned to do a lot of other things within music, and I tell students this too. Like for a while, I was part of this wedding band, and they found out that I could arrange horn charts, so I did a lot of that. Uh,
Mm,
this was before computers, but and as computers got involved, like I made sure that I had my Sibelius chops together, and I tell students the more things you can do, the better off you're going to be. If you can, you don't have to be Wayne Bergeron, but if you can play some lead, great. You don't have to be Freddie Hubbard, but if you can play some jazz, great. You don't have to be Allison Balsam, but if you can play some classical, great. You can do a church gig, whatever. You
yeah.
just kind of, you just, your higher ability, if that's a word, just expands. Be able to write, be able to arrange a brass quintet or something. Have your Pro Tools or Logic chops together or Ableton, whatever. Just the more things you can do, the better off you're going to be. I know a lot of jazz players that when it's slow, they do a lot of copy work. And that's always someone looking to do that, to have them, have stuff copied, people that just don't have time or whatever. And
Yeah.
that's, there are things you can do within music, but even if those have dried up, I would absolutely take a day gig. I would, if I needed to, I would absolutely. I was lucky enough at that time. It was pretty busy in the 80s where that wasn't something I didn't have to do, but I sure would have if I needed to.
Yeah, and I think that's important for young players to hear. Well, like, when you're getting going, like it's okay to have to do this job. I think who was I talking to of it might have been Allie Albrecht. She plays in the Navy Commodores. Like she was an RA or something at whichever school she was studying at. I can't remember. In that
Manhattan, I was,
Manhattan. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so like and that helped pay for her housing and stuff, and that great, like that works out perfectly. Or I know another player, I'm sure you're familiar with, Kellen Hannis, where on the side she's doing like social media management or something like that for a bunch of players. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something along those lines. It's like that's great too. Like there's so many things outside of just playing the trumpet where if you can add that to your skill set, you're so much better off. And I think, at least for me being young, I would have never thought that somebody like yourself would know what Logic or Ableton or would like do. It's like, oh, they play trumpet and that's the thing that they do. And then in all these interviews and whatnot, like speaking with Wayne, he's like, yeah, I'm a producer. I can have a whole setup and brand new and like he does like all that stuff. I'm like, he's probably one of the greatest lead trumpet players of all time, and he's in the studios all the time, but he still does that. It's like, wow.
He can mix, he can produce, he can, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so for you, what are some of those other skills that you develop? We talk about arranging. You do any composition or copy work or any of that stuff as well?
All of the above, yeah. I was a little late to the game in terms of the like the I owned Pro Tools for many years before I was able to open it up and figure it out. And I still I decided to go with Logic, so I record from home. I bought a nice mic and preamp, and I talked to Wayne about it, and he said, "Oh, you got to get this." And I just talked to people who are in a similar area, and oh, this sounds great on flute. This sounds great on trumpet, and if you stay like 6 inches away from this, but this at an angle, whatever. There's all these little tricks. I go into the studio and like they set up my mic, and I just kind of sit up. I just play. I don't notice it. But now I'm like thinking, oh boy, it's off, off axis, and
Mm.
I didn't really know that I found myself having to know, especially during the pandemic. There was tons of home recording going
Oh
on.
yeah, yeah.
So it was helpful. And going back to your previous thing, just talking about doing other things. I went to college with this trombone player, and it wasn't even just that he wasn't working. This guy he felt like he just wanted to play jazz. He did not want to play like a wedding band. In fact, he told me at one point, he said, I would rather work at Burger King than play in a wedding band. And it's like, okay, cool, But and he would have a day job, but that was his choice. And it was like,
Yeah.
hey, good for you. I was just like, man, if I'm playing my horn, I mean, I think that's better, but whatever, everyone's got to do it. So
Yeah, to each their own, I guess. But I think that's kind of like that's what I'm trying to like. If there's any young musicians who have the kind of that mentality, like I'd rather do a day job than this. It's like, okay, well, that's probably what you're going to have to do. And if you're okay with that, great. But if you wanted to just play jazz and that's it, like I was talking with Pat Harbison a little bit about that, and he's like, yep, he tells his students where it's like you either commit to poverty, you marry somebody rich, or like you do other music, or those are pretty much your options if that's what you want to do. It's like, yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, so moving on to you've been doing all these things. You can record at home, you copy, you arrange, all that stuff. But I think what would you say you're most known for as far as trumpet and trumpet playing and Tony Kadleck, he's the greatest or such and such.
I don't think I'm the greatest at anything, but I appreciate your question. I understand what you're. I don't know. I mean, I guess because my bread and butter seems to be shows, but it wasn't always. But people kind of think of you as that when in reality, I take off my show all the time to do gigs that pay a tenth what the show pays, just because I want to play music. I like to play music of new composers. But as far as what are you known for, I mean, I guess I'll give the standard freelance answer, jack of all trades, master of none. I think in some ways, like people call me because they think, well, he's not the greatest lead player in the world, but he can play lead. He's not the greatest jazz player in the world, but he can play some jazz. He can sit in an orchestra and not completely embarrass himself. And that's kind of what I was never one to put all the eggs in one basket, just because I liked a lot of different kinds of music, and I always wanted to keep those parts of my playing together. So I don't know, in a perfect world, I would like to say versatility, though I don't know.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I understand what you're saying and whatnot. So when it comes to shows, obviously you've been doing a lot of shows for a long time. What would be some of your advice of, there's a player who wants to start getting experience doing shows, not necessarily in New York, not maybe necessarily even in a professional space from where they're at, but where could somebody start getting some experience on any type of show?
I think nowadays it's very different. When I was in high school, we would do a musical and people they'd be begging people to, can you play in the pit? Oh, please play. We couldn't get musicians to play.
Mm.
And now it seems like every Broadway is really the popularity has blown up. And so I know tons of really good players that will do high school productions of shows just because and in reasonably affluent areas, high schools will pay to have a professional pit come in, and they'll have some students as well, but they'll also have some pros come in and play. So there's that I think, especially when you're out of the bigger cities, I think that's kind of a big deal. It seems to be anyway across the country. As far as like towns where there is Broadway or show, or there is a theater where they house touring shows, I think there's usually, a few people that kind of control it all, and there's not that much work. Here, there's like a million different shows, so there might be 35 trumpet players holding down chairs, and each of those people probably has 10 people they can call the sub, so the pool's pretty wide.
Yeah.
But in smaller towns, I think you just find the person that kind of does the work that you'd like to do, and whether it's the contractor or the trumpet player themselves, just say, look, I would love to get involved in this if you ever need someone, if you're hung up or whatever, and just be, nice and self-effacing, and not like I'm going to take over the town, but like, and if you ever need someone to come in and try to, knock it out of the park, I would be happy to shed really hard and try to play as close to how you play as possible. Because that ultimately Broadway likes predictability. They don't really like unpredictability. They don't want someone who's going to come in and like whatever the regular person does, for better or worse, is what they're used to, and they like what they're used to. So if there's a player that you're subbing for that plays really strong, then you got to hit it pretty hard. If there's a player that plays pretty tame, and you think it should be louder, they don't want it louder. They want it like they're used to hearing it every other night.
That's good. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
The conductor wants that, the stage wants that, the sound design people want that. It's just easier for them to not have to, jump through hoops to like remix like somebody who's trying to put their own stamp on it.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I'm gonna have to add that into my chapter. It was done. Now I got to add to it. No, that's great. I had thought about that and considered that. How do you know what the person you're subbing for, how they approach the show? You'd mentioned you can come sit and observe the show and watch the book and whatnot. Besides that, is there any other suggestions you would have to approaching that situation?
Well, you will get like an audio tape, but I mean that'll tell you like phrasing things and articulation things and whatnot. But what it won't show you is like the volume that's actually going down during the gig. So that when you go to watch the book, or I guess they call it auditing it, or in London they call it depping, whatever, and you can kind of get some line on like how loud people are playing. Like, oh wow, that's softer than I would have thought, or wow, that's louder than I would have thought. Occasionally, if like the band's on stage, obviously you can't be sitting there on stage watching street clothes, but so you kind of have to approximate. And I always find the best thing to do is to just check in with your peers when you're playing. Like, hey, can I come up a bit? Should I come down a bit? What do you need from me? Am I playing the right volume? And
Yeah.
you know, people will say, you could play a little stronger, it'd be cool, or no, you're perfect, leave it as is. Or so I think it's kind of trial or error, and because when you sub, there's no rehearsal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it's this though.
Yeah.
Folks that have been listening to this for 6 months or 20 years or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and it's like your first time. But we all had a first time, so you try to cut people some slack. And
Sure, yeah. But and obviously, there's ways to prepare. Like you get the copy of the book, you have the conductor recording, you have probably whatever streaming, whatever like on Spotify or Apple Music. The show's also probably there. So there's really not an excuse to be missing stuff, quote unquote. And I've also heard that it's you get one shot, sink or swim, and if you sink, it's tough to get back into that.
yeah, I mean,
Into that a little.
yeah, I think they do expect like they expect pretty high quality right out of the gate. But I mean, it used to be conductors were actual conductors. Now it seems like 99 times out of 100, the conductors are keyboard players who learn to conduct for the sole purpose of that show or whatever. And some are very understanding, and some know music and they know other instruments. And some are just keyboard folks that don't really know. They don't understand when you miss a note, like, well, because on the keyboard, it's not that hard. Some it's pretty hard. So some people are more tolerant than others. So you kind of have to weigh that. But as far as the other thing, I mean, sorry, I drew a little bit of a blank on your question.
Yeah, like just of when you're preparing for Broadway gig, and what do you need to do to make sure you're coming in, and it's
Right.
like, oh, there's somebody who's not so and so here.
Right, gotcha. When I looked at the book at Wicked, I was thinking, man, there's a lot of mixed meter and the conduct like there's a lot of push and pull. There's nothing that's just in time. And they had given me dates already to play, and I said, I don't think I don't think I can do this. I just don't have the time to put in to do the job I want to do. So I said, thanks for having me. You guys sound great. I don't think I can do this. And then so I went off and I did another show, and then when that show closed, they called again. They said, "Hey, do you want to sub?" And I said, "You know what? This time I actually have time to put in." So I just sat and watched the conductor video, and I must have played that thing like 35 times at home,
Hmm.
just before I could even walk in and do it.
Yeah.
And then, well, and even then it was tense. The first 20 times I was panicking, but it's what it is, and but the people that put the time in, they'll hopefully rise to the top and do a good job, and it'll get noticed that they're trying really hard, but it's one of those things where you really do have to stay on it and put the time in, and it's hard because then when you'll be subbing, and if you're subbing for someone who doesn't take off very much, like you might go 4 months without being back at Wicked or wherever, and I review it. It's like, wow, man, I can't even remember this. It was so long ago.
Yeah, yeah, that would be really tough. How do you and how do others like over there in New York and on Broadway kind of approach those situations where you might be on, because you can sub for multiple shows, right?
Sure.
So like if you're four shows, or for example, and you're playing these two a lot, and this one, the third one occasionally, and that fourth one, like all of a sudden you have a free night, and it's like, yeah, it's been 4 months. How do you how do you approach that and get ready for the gig that day? Because I'm sure a lot of the calls either come day of, or right before, or whatever.
Absolutely. I think you just do what you did. You do a crash course of what you did when you prepared for the show initially, which is just, refamiliarize yourself with the conductor video. Or just sometimes I'll just be on the train going down and I'll just be listening to it. Oh yeah, I remember that. This one, yeah, this one goes from 4 to 2. Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember. And you just it'll come back, but you can't go in like, oh, this is gonna be fine. I did this 5 months ago. It's like, oh man. I mean, your mind you played a lot of notes in the last 5 months that weren't this. So you have to
Yeah.
refresh your memory. But
Yeah, that sounds a little that sounds a little scary to just. I think I'll be fine. You hope you do. Yeah, man. So what are some of the I'm sure you've done so many shows, but what are some of the shows that you've done, or some of your favorites that you've been able to play, and I don't know what you would call it, maybe the first trumpet player for any specific shows, like the very first time this show happened, you were the first trumpet player to play it.
yeah, I mean, lots of them probably over the years, but I don't know. I mean, Frozen or Beauty and the Beast or oh boy, I don't know. I'm trying to think.
I think that's a big question, I guess.
There's, I'm trying to remember which ones hadn't been done before. Like I did Gypsy, but Gypsy it seems to come back every 5 years. But yeah, a lot of ones that were flops that you would never have heard of. For all the hits you do, there's a lot of flops. Like I did 10 years of Beauty and the Beast, so that
Whew,
was that was kind of enough. And
that's a long time.
humans are not made to hear the same music every night,
Yeah,
every year.
yeah,
But
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of flops and stuff like that. But you do the best you can, and you find there's no right way to do it. I mean you try to do it as you read it and use your best judgment. But then they go on the road and they changed that. Oh, it's different. Oh yeah, they didn't like that. So sometimes they love what you do, and sometimes they're like, let's change it, whatever.
Yeah, that makes
That's
sense.
an ego. There's just, I don't have a dog in the race. It's not my music. I'm here to do what they tell me to do. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got to play at a theater, local theater here. We played Jersey Boys, and got to play that, and that was fun. And then later on, they didn't hire a pit, but they had like a play that needed like the parts recorded, and they sent me the like, you can do it from home or come here, and I was like, I'll do it at home. That'll be much easier. And they sent it to me with like the guide track, and the measures were off, and there was like weird markings that weren't music markings all over the place. Like something got lost in translation. I spent like 6 hours getting the first 4 tracks done, and there was like 32 scenes, and I'm like, and it didn't pay, that much. I thought I'd be able to knock it out in an hour or two, and I was like, oh my gosh. So I was like, hey, I'm gonna come in and you gotta help me out here. And then we knocked it out, but I was like, oh my. Yeah, that'd be a nightmare to come in and try and read. I'm sure that all the music that you end up reading is pretty spot on and clear and easy to read.
You'd be surprised.
Really?
I mean, some of that could be the fault of the player. Some people like I mark my book pretty meticulously. I'm kind of like that, but I find that if you don't mark it like at the first rehearsal, it's going to go. You're going to forget it. And then every time you see it, it's like, oh yeah, it's just this, But the sub doesn't know that. So if you don't mark it like immediately, it's probably not going to get marked. So pretty uptight about that. But sometimes even the copyists they'll write plain quarter notes with no accents or anything on them, and it's like that could be played 4 different ways. I mean, you gotta throw me a bone, help me out here. Like, and the sideways accent, that doesn't really mean anything. I mean, if you're playing, Mahler, it means something. But to me, like I need a line or a dot, or a cap. I don't need it just makes it hard. Like
Yeah.
I did a movie yesterday, and like they didn't do, there were just plain quarter notes there, and it's like now you got to have the discussion. Well, that one should be short, but this one should be long, and then it's like just put it on the page for us, and then we'll make it right. It's honest. They don't really know what they want, so
Yeah.
they want to audition different things, and that's cool too. But I like to have it set up ahead of time. So
Yeah.
usually it's cool, but not always.
Okay. Yeah, because especially if your sub's coming in and they don't know that you're supposed to, if there's a written caesura that was put in later, like that's you're gonna have a problem.
I've been doing the same show for 4.5 years now, and I can tell you every part that's not marked in someone else's book because subs will come in and inevitably they'll hold over to one, even though we've been cutting off on four for years, just because it got written in. It's like,
Yeah.
and yeah, and there's a new sub, and I'm like, here we go, and it's not their fault. They're reading what's on the page, but so you gotta be pretty meticulous with marking.
Yeah. Do you ever get to keep the music after a show, or do you return it to the whoever, or the production, or whatever it is?
Well, you return it, but I mean, at that point, you have a digital copy of it anyway,
Mm.
because most people read off iPads now anyway. But yeah, there are people that read the written music too, and so you have to make sure that that's updated. If there's a change, you can't just change it in your iPad because you have to change it in the book as well.
That's tricky.
And before iPads, we would have to go out. We would take the book out, and we'd go to Kinko's and we'd copy 300 pages of music and
Man.
different copies of it for all the subs, so everyone could have their book.
Well, that sounds like a nightmare. That's a lot of work. Jeez. Yeah, I'm a fan of iPads. Much easier. Do you know? So obviously, Paul has his books where there's excerpts and different things. Do you know of any resources where a player could find that digital copy of whatever show and start? They might not necessarily be playing it, but it's like, hey, I want to learn how to play Wicked, and here's the music. Do you know of any places or resources like that where you can just learn a show and start putting those shows kind of in your back pocket?
Usually people will just text other people who have done the show and say, I don't know how that works in terms of copyright or any of that,
Right.
but like I have a pretty vast collection of stuff I've done over the years, and if a student wants to, play the third trumpet part to Gypsy, I'll be able to produce that. But yeah, I get calls all the time. Hey, I'm doing, you know, doing curtains on the road. Do you have the first trumpet part? And oh yeah, sure. Also, or I'm doing whatever, and they'll find out who did it on Broadway, and they'll try to reach out and see if they can nail down that book. Yeah, but it's done right wise. I'm not sure how groovy that is, but
Right. Yeah, sure. And that's like, I know that's the hard thing is like, yeah, I want to have music. So in my mind, it's like, hey, I want to prepare for these gigs. Like, I want to, whatever, like, what books can I get that have the music that I can practice so that when it comes, it's not on the fly learning or figuring things out, you know? So I'm like, I know there's a couple books out there with church musician kind of stuff, like, or wedding ceremonies, and you can at least get an idea of, you know, what that's going to sound like. And there's things like that. But it's like, man, if you just have music for all these things that you could purchase and like start working on, it'd be so nice. But that's like a
Yeah.
big copyright thing, I guess.
I guess I'm not even sure how that works, but I know that it's it's pretty easy to get a hold of that stuff if you just know the right people. Or sometimes I'll get calls, hey, do you have the third trumpet part for West Side Story? I'm like, well, I don't, but I know where you can get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Let's see. What are some other things that young musicians should know going into Broadway? You know, if I've seen, and even recently I did a thing where it said like all it said was Gazzo exclamation point, and I'd been talking with Josh Kaufman, and he's like, yeah, Conrad Gazzo, lead player. I was like, oh, okay. And so, but you wouldn't know that unless you knew who Conrad Gazzo was. Or I saw one where it was I think it was in high school, it was White Christmas. There was like a moment where it said a la Harry James, and I'm like, who's that? Like, I don't know who that is. Now I know who Harry James is and what that means, but back then I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to play it, and nobody, you know, it was high school, so nobody really cared. But you know, there's all those like small things in the music or mutes and setup, the mics and everything. What would be your advice to a young player on learning what all of those things mean so that they understand it when they see it?
Right. Well, I would just say, Harry James. You Google Harry James, and you're going to get a lesson right there, and that, and at least be able to approximate it or whatever. Now, I mean, with the internet in your hand, basically, there's no excuse for not like doing homework and researching it. We'd see like there was like a mute on someone would write I can't even remember what it was, but it was a term for mute. It was a specific type of mute, and we didn't know what the heck it was. So, and then I learned later it was cup mute or whatever. But but now, I mean, it's all there for you. You just got to do the research and find out what it is. Listen to the cast recording. If I have to play this thing coming up, and it's like a bunch of mixed meter, and it's kind of hard. I'm like, I must have listened to that thing like 30 times, and it wasn't even this particular arrangement that I have to play Monday, but it was like a piano vocal, and I was just like a 3/8, okay, you just got to do your homework on your own so that when you get to the gig, you're not no surprises. I think preparation is going to help you. You just got to be prepared. And then the basic things that, or at least they should be basic. You show up on time, you show up ready to go. You show up with all the right stuff that you're going to need, and you're nice and you're pleasant. You say hi to people, you say goodbye to people.
Mm-hmm.
Just common courtesy things. There are a lot of great players that don't really get the time of day because they're just not fun to be around. And we talked about that a little bit earlier. Our business is so cutthroat. There's no room for someone who's not going to be cool. You got to be cool because otherwise they could get 35 other people like that to do what I'm doing. They just got to. So yeah, I've just humble pie and leave the ego at the door. Have the ego in your head for when you play, but don't you don't have to show the world that you have it.
Yeah. I like that. Keep the ego in your head to get the job done, but don't show everybody. Oh, that's great. I love that. I'm gonna have to quote that in the book somewhere. That's great. When it comes to mutes and instruments, mouthpieces, do you find that you have to, depending on maybe the scene or depending on the show, you're changing what you're using as far as equipment with mouthpieces, mutes, all that stuff?
Absolutely. Like I did one show. It was a real super legit show. It didn't even go above like a high C sharp. So I just played the whole thing on a 3B, I think I was playing at the time. But yeah, a lot of times I'll be in a rehearsal space and the acoustics will be nice. I'll be able to hear myself and I'll say to myself, I could probably play this show on my bigger mouthpiece. I don't even need to play my lead mouthpiece. And then you get in the pit and then they throw a bunch of baffles around you and then and then next thing it's like playing into a pillow, and you're like, well, there goes that. I guess I'll get my smaller mouthpiece out just to save my face a little bit.
Yeah.
So much of it has to do with the environment that you're playing in. But for me, equipment wise, I joked with Wayne because like they go to a film day and they can throw like seven horns in their trunk. Oh, I need a D trumpet today. I need a flugel. And it's like that's great if you have a car, but if you're like in New York, we're on the subway. We're not going to carry seven horns in case we might need a D trumpet. So
Yeah.
it's just a different world, but I try to carry as much stuff as possible. Lately, like in past days, I would just like if it said, if it didn't say anything, I would bring every mute I own just in case. But
Mm.
now they'll send you a PDF of the part beforehand, and so you check it out. And it's like I only need straight mute, so you show up with just straight mute, and they say, "Hey, you know what? Let's do that on cup mute." It's like, oh man, you know what? If you didn't say anything, I would have just brought everything. But because you said something specific, I just brought that. But the lesson I learned is I just bring everything all the time, as much as you can. And just be prepared because you don't know what they're going to want. I did a movie about a month ago, and it was called for flugelhorn, and it was a solo. And they said, "Yeah, let's try it on trumpet." And I said, "Okay." So I tried on trumpet, and they said, "No, let's try it on with a bucket mute." And I said, "Okay." And I did that. And then they said, "Do you have a bag you could put over your bell?" And I didn't have a bag. And I was like, "Oh man, I should have brought a bag." Like they have those Crown Royal bags you throw over your bell. But Chris Martin was playing, and he said, "Man, I got one." So I used Chris Martin's my claim to fame. I used Chris Martin's Crown Royal bag on my on a movie. So
It worked out. Yeah.
looked out, but it just goes to show you got to bring everything, just because you never know what you're going to need.
Yeah. Do you
But
ever
we,
find, yeah, go ahead.
no, that's it.
Do you ever find that you need to bring different types of mutes or like different brands of mutes where it's like, okay, well, I need it says for cup mute, but not the Humes and Berg kind. I'm getting a different sound. I need to get Dennis Wick or the myriad of cup mutes that are, out there.
Some people do that. I don't usually do that. If I mean, I'll ask if I'm playing a lower part, I'll ask the first player if they mind. But I just show up with my mutes. Sometimes I'll bring a regular straight mute and then a soft straight mute in case
Mm.
it's really delicate. But my feeling is like, you got a Dennis Wick, I have a Humes and Berg. What I mean, I my feeling is that unless everyone has the same horn and mouthpiece and airstream and oral cavity. I mean, the difference between like a copper bottom and I mean, I think it's just, people blow that out of proportion. I get it if you're in an orchestra and you want a certain thing, but that's not so much in my world. Though I did a West Side Story with Philadelphia Orchestra once, and Jeff Kurnow was playing, and he had five straight mutes, and he brought five straight mutes on stage with him for West Side Story. And I was like, wow. And he goes, "Oh, this one's, it's got a good low C on it. And this one, like, and he had reasons for all of it." And I was like, man, that's just so much deeper than I go.
Yeah, yeah. Like that makes sense, but wow, like yeah,
Totally
that's a
makes,
lot.
yeah, and he sounded amazing. And there was a reason for all of them, but I don't usually subscribe to that in the Broadway world anyway.
Sure, sure. Okay, yeah. And then do you end up using in-ear monitors or their floor monitors a lot of the time, or just kind of depend on the theater?
It does. I have yet to find an in-ear monitor system that feels right for me. I have them, but I don't use them very often. And more shows are on headphones. So I might have four pairs of headphones at my show. It's nuts. But I end up just going back to the same Sonys that I have when I record, and they're comfortable and they're pretty good. But there are a couple of times during the show where the stage is above us and it's really loud, and they stomp, and it's like they stomp out of time with the click. So
Dear,
I have these gun muffle headphones I put on so that I can actually play time and not play with their stomping, which is 10 times louder than anything I'm listening to. But yeah, you learn little tricks over time, but
yeah, yeah. It's like I'm like wanted to capture as many of those little tricks as I can, but it's like sometimes you just don't know about it. You just like you have to experience it. And it's like, oh,
you get there. Yeah, yeah, in ears. I mean, there are plenty of subs at our show that use in ears, and they are great with them. I just, I can't. For me, it's just rattling around in my head, my own sound, and I'm not. Maybe I just haven't found the right ones, or
sure. Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is a different feeling for sure. Okay, maybe like last question for you. Thank you again for all your time and yeah, thank you. And last question. Is there anything you know now that you wish you would have known when you were younger and starting out?
oh, that's a really good question. I think that yeah, I tend to overthink things sometimes, and I think sometimes it's best to just do things. I mean, obviously you want to have thought into what you're doing, but the mind is very powerful. You can talk yourself in or out of a lot of stuff, whether that means nerves or whatever, or like how do I approach this? Or, I've had two students over the years that they'll pick up their horn and they're just like you can see the wheels turning, and they're working it out, and then like they can't start a note. They literally can't. They almost like a tick or a stutter of some sort. And if I count them off, 2, 3, 4, boom, they'll play. But if left to their own devices, they can't execute. And it's just because I think they're overthinking things so much. And we all have a propensity to do that sometimes. But I find myself overthinking constantly. And I wish I had just like tamped that down earlier in my career. I think it would have been better. And just sometimes you just gotta play, I mean, I'm, oh man, I think that clarinet player, I think I'm too loud because that clarinet player is like ducking whenever I play a high note. So now I play softer, and now I'm cracking notes left and right. It's like sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, and people will adjust and not be so affected by the folks around you. That sounds silly because you want interplay and you want to be able to be affected by them, but at a certain point, you just have to kind of get the job done. And I think my only advice to myself anyway would be to just not overthink everything.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Yeah, I've been even this week trying to teach some of my young students. They're asking about range. Like, I want to play high, and it's like, okay, play high, play high C. This is how it works and the mechanics and stuff. And then they're like overthinking about. That's how it works, but also like don't think about it, just play, right? And it's like, oh, and it's like, yeah, like sometimes you just need to, you know what to do. Your body knows what to do. Just do it.
Right. Yeah. And it's hard with the internet because as much as it helps us, it also hurts us. I had one student that he's taken lessons with about 30 million trumpet players. It's just like crazy. And he's got, what do you think about the Maggio? What do you think about the Adam? What do you think about, it's like at a certain point, you just got to sit in the room and do it, like, but because, well, this person said this and this person says this. And it's like, that can be debilitating in a way.
Where you're almost learning too much. It's like too
Right.
many schools of thought. Just go here and whatever helps you get the job done. That's all you need to do, right?
I think I'm straining too much. Well, I don't know. I don't think it's debilitating, but I think there's too much tension in my throat. I mean, I don't really have an answer to that really, other than like trying to relax. It's hard because, it's not a normal process to blow air through your body and into a metal tube that's smashed against your face. That's not normal. So
Yeah.
we're gonna have different ways of coming to hopefully a good conclusion.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, Tony, thank you so much again for taking your time to chat with us and share all this information and whatnot. Really appreciate it. I'm like sitting here learning. I'm like, wow, this is great. Like, where's my notebook? I'm really excited to go back and listen to this and just glean all that awesome wisdom from you. So appreciate it again.
No, Jaden, I appreciate it. Thanks for doing this. And I really look forward to the finished product because it sounds like it's a pretty comprehensive undertaking, as you said. It's taken years to come to fruition. So good for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's taken a long time, but it's I think a resource that I would have loved and a resource that I think a lot of people will find useful. And that's the hope is that it's just whoever the small kid in Nebraska, small town, just like I want to play trumpet. I want to do it. Here you go, buddy. Like here it is. You go do it. So and thanks for being a part of it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much.